Hi Dr. Laila and my friends. We are from Good 8. Today we will discuss about the American foreign policy toward the United States and China relations. This is our group members, which is Tharmalraj A, me, Ling Wei, Yu Zhe, and also Chia Chern. Today we will discuss about the overview of preferred American foreign policy, analytical framework, analysis of preferred American foreign policy, policy implications, and also policy recommendations.
Wishing a very good day to Dr. Laila and my fellow friends. So me myself Tharmalraj Kumar, matrix number 270312, is going to explain about the introduction part of our assignment, which is talking about the US-China relation. The US and China relation have undergone an astonishing transition over the past few decades. These two enormous nations have discovered area of issues in some aspects and sectors, most importantly economy, which we will discuss in this slides presentation. Economy is a sector both the nation trying to seize the economic power. US and China have the most vital complex bilateral relationship which can impact and influence global economy, and it also can impact many countries which relies on these two nations. Okay, this part is gonna be about the overview of preferred American foreign policy. So we as a group have decided to discuss about the trade war. The trade war between US and China began with one country targets another country by increasing tariffs in crucial industries, and the receiving country retaliates. So in March 2018, US imposed 25% of tariff on aluminum and steel imports of all countries. So in the way of showing their retaliation against US, China imposed a 25% tariff on 128 products including airplanes and soybeans. So these tariffs didn't stop here. It grows by and grows by US imposing a tariff, and China will retaliate it by their impose a tariff on US product, and this issue grow bigger and bigger. Although many truce talks and negotiations were initiated, but nothing comes handy as a solution. And as a consequences, at the end, the effective tariff on United States imports from China stood at 21% compared to 3.1% at the beginning of 2018. The effective tariff on Chinese imported goods from the United States stood at 20.9% compared with 8% of at the beginning of the 2018. Okay, continuing with the overview, US we are not happy with China business policy and emerging of China as global economic power, which is not in a fairly manner according to US. There are a few points to support the above statement from the USA. US attributed China entry in World Trade Organization, also known as WTO. According to the US, argued that membership in an international organization such as WTO will act as a check on China's government, speeding up its transition to a market economy and encouraging it to have a greater stake in global routes. Secondly, US criticized that China for treating business unfairly and favoring domestic and state-owned corporations. The US emphasized that China particularly to support for state-driven industrial policies that develop domestic companies and favoring state-owned corporations in particular, which in eyes of US is very unfair. Thirdly, US identified that China as a major market order for its exporting companies. US claimed that China had restricted export through licensing and quotas in order to favor domestic downstream firms at the expense of global rivals. And the fourth point will be that US condemned the China government for lax handling of trade secrets. The US expressed displeasure that its companies were being forced to relinquish their technology in order to receive investment and clearance from the Chinese government. All these points act as a major factor to US move forward with China with trade war, although this could also harm US market, which the US country didn't take much into consideration.
Next, Ong Chia Chern will continue with the analytical framework theory that we choose is offensive realism. The pioneer of offensive realism is John Mearsheimer. Mearsheimer emphasized that states should prioritize and maximize their power to best become the hegemon so that they can best protect their national interests because no one can threaten their positions. The first basic assumption is international community is anarchy. No one is above and control other countries. Second is state prioritize their own national interests than other people's interests. Third, all states are suspicious. We should trust ourselves because other countries will have potential threat to invade us. The fourth is country always strengthens themselves and weaken the others to make sure that we will have a gap between each other. Therefore, no one can threaten us. Furthermore, this will be the analysis of preferred American foreign policy. US having aggressive foreign policy toward China because China is very suspicious. The rapid emergence of China since 2008 until now become compatible with the US, will threaten US dominant place in the world. Also, China unfair trading, which is export to US more than import from the US, have really affected US economy to drop. Secondly, US implement economic sanctions on China to protect US interests, stop US trade deficit. US have already increased 3 times of tariff on China import. The purpose of this tariff is to reduce the China import also to collect tax from the China as much as possible to fuel their financial debt. Thirdly, US called on 19 days of break in the trade war to protect their local industry because the local industry will get affected by the trade war about half year. Also, US required China to stop the unfair trading and start import more from the US to increase their local industry's sales. Fourth, US weakened the China economy influence. On the 15 May 2019, US added Huawei in the entity list, which means without the permission of US government, US company not allowed to sell any product to the Huawei. This is to stop or slow down the 5G development of Huawei. Also, US announced that the 5G technology will threaten the national security and urged US airlines to boycott Huawei 5G technology. As a result, Australia and New Zealand totally banned the 5G technology to go into their country, and France and Spain concerned about their national security and worried to sign and accept the 5G technology.
Most of the advocates say that trade wars would protect national interests. It is typically asserted that for a seizable nation like the United States, the traffic causes decline in product purchase on international markets is desirable enough to result in a reduction in the global price. Foreign sellers would end up paying part of the tariff and receive a lower after-tariff price. As a result, the home price would ultimately increase by less than the tariff and making it less expensive for United States consumers. Using this reasoning, President Trump claimed that China's citizens will be on the hook for the import tax on steel and aluminum. He asserted that trade wars are good and easy to win. However, the United States has suffered loss in some aspects. The Phase 1 trade agreement between China and United States had hurt the United States economy. Trade war traffics had raised price and punished United States consumers. During the trade war, China repeatedly retaliated against United States tariffs by raising tariffs on United States business and farmers. China also lowering tariffs on exported from other countries. This policy puts United States producers at a disadvantage. Besides, retaliatory tariffs cut United States agriculture export by $27 billion between the tariff imposition in mid-2018 and the end of 2019. Soybean, in particular, account for most of the decline, which is 71%, followed by sorghum and pork. United States lost nearly $16 billion in trade of agricultural markets alone. Due to the trade war, the United States economy got slow and business investment froze. The trade war had already cost the United States economy nearly 300,000 jobs and estimate 0.3% of real GDP. The trade war also gives implications to the United States political. Certain people and regions of the country suffer more than others due to the original tariff's higher import costs and the subsequent drop in export costs by American trade partners. It is possible that Republicans would have lost votes if the voters in this area had blamed Republicans for their financial difficulties. Whereas Reformuna saw the trade war impacts the voting result of 2018 midterm congressional election. Counterfactual calculations also show that Republicans would not lose 10 seats in the House of Representatives without the trade war.
I'm Yeoh Yu Zhe, metric number 280829. I will explain the implication of the US policy of launching a trade war against China to others in the realm of international relations. As the United States is a superpower, its action or inaction on various issues will have different degree of impact on different countries and regions. Further, the US is the world's largest economy. History has shown any US monetary or fiscal policy affect other economies to varying degrees. When the world's largest economy launches a trade war with the world's second largest economy, that is China, the impact is unimaginable for the rest of the world. Unlike the United States, China has indeed paid a price in the trade war. A working paper titled Illuminating the Effect of the US-China Tariff War on China's Economy predicts the bottom 2.5% of China's population were most affected by the tariff imposed by the US, experienced a 2.52% decline in per capita income and a 1.62% decline in manufacturing employment. Besides, a number of corporations announced their plan to move their manufacturing away from China amid concern about the trade war. Based on Nikkei Asian research, more than 50 multinational companies, including Apple and Nintendo, have planned to relocate their production bases outside of China. Meanwhile, some Chinese businesses were also departing China. For instance, Chinese global electronic company TCL moved its TV production to Vietnam, and Chinese tire manufacturer Cylon Tire relocated its production to Thailand. Countries have mixed feelings about the implication of the US policy against China, the world's factories. On the one hand, some countries and regions have somewhat benefited from the economic clashes between the US and China. For example, Mexico surpassed China to become the US top trading partner in 2019. The US good trade deficit with Mexico increased by 14.9% from 2017 to 2018, and that was in Mexico's favor. As for China, the Association of Southeast Asia Nations, or ASEAN, surpassed the United States to become its second largest trading partner. In 2019, China's export to Southeast Asia alone increased by $38.5 billion compared with 2018. On the other hand, most countries and regions have been hit hard due to the economic conflict between the US and China. Some developed countries, especially European nations, are worried about the US policy against China and have redirected their supply chains away from like-minded countries with no shared values. In particular, African countries have not benefited from the new supply chain strategy. This is because the reorganization of the supply chain is not meant to shift and encourage trade, investment, and jobs to African trading partners. Instead, the strategy strongly prioritizes their allies and partners in Asia and the Indo-Pacific region only. In the end, not only developing countries in Africa, but also developing countries outside the circle of the strategy are at a disadvantage, let alone the situation of the least developed countries, mostly in Africa. Last but not least, there's a dilemma of choosing sides between the two superpowers. The US has waged an intense campaign to convince their European allies and partners that Chinese Huawei technologies possess a security risk to their national interest and security. There was an uproar when the Netherlands' leading wireless operator selected Huawei to supply equipment for its next generation 5G wireless network. Another instance is the threat faced by both Australia and New Zealand from China, their largest trading partner, as they support the US against Huawei. As a result, countries have been forced to grapple with a standoff between the US and China.
Alright, this slide is gonna be about the policy recommendation to President Biden's administration. In the current trade war situation, a policy recommendation is very crucial since it will guarantee that the US will choose the correct pathway in the near future. The most crucial criteria for the policy recommendation is to maintain the United States dominance in the global arena and ensure that US did not lose its position in global economy, particularly in the end of China. Although we could explain few policy recommendations such as escalating trade war, but this will make the situation more worse, and this not gonna look nice in the eyes of international arena. Let's say if United de-escalate or give up the trade war, but this is against the national pride of US, and this not gonna help US position in global economy, as China might overtake US. So as a policy recommendation to President Biden's administration, we recommend that modifying the trade war and economic policies might mean seeking diverse supply chains, reducing crisis vulnerability, and keeping US competitive in international markets. US main strategy should build greater resistance to reliance on Chinese components. Although we all know that US economy do depends on China products, but US should find an alternative market. So here comes European Union (EU) as an alternative market to US as they share the same viewpoint on China as they oppose the China business policy and they also oppose the China human rights abuses which occur in the China land. Not only that, the American Leads Act should be highly prioritized by the US government. American Leads Act is an investment into 5G technology and AI, artificial intelligence by the United States. This also prevents China influence in technology sector at the same time and promoting home markets of 5G technology across the globe.
In conclusion, United States foreign policy employs aggressive realism in the trade war. However, the United States had lost out due to the trade conflict in specific ways, which is economic and political. The phase one trade deal between China and the United States had damaged the American economy severely. Republicans of the United States also lost votes in districts hit hard by the trade war in the 2018 election. Meanwhile, China itself has also undoubtedly paid the price in the trade battle. It is established and proven that trade wars result in no winners. Thus, a policy recommendation for changing the trade war could mean seeking to diversify supply chains, reduce crisis vulnerability, and keep American competitive in international markets. That's all of our presentations. Thank you.